join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
The missing 4-year-old. The parents have called the other but the mother has went through a wall, came home, now they can't find her.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Once I told a lie, and I told my family, I had to keep lying.
What's your, is it deemed?
We haven't cleared anybody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for another ATS News live stream. Christina, I see you in chat, and I just wanted to thank you right away for the gift for my little one. I seen it when I woke up this morning, and I just appreciate you being a huge supporter of the channel, as well as everyone who's here. I mean, I see Adrian, Margie, Heather, Mally, Tony, Zoe. You guys have, you're always here for the Watts deep dives. Ellie, good to see you. James, hello. I will say, guys, I have tried to reach out to Being Bio Girl, and I have not been able to reach her. And we always spoke via Facebook Messenger. I know sometimes she's in other chats in the true crime world. If you guys see her, let me know. I'm just getting a little worried about her because even Facebook says that she hasn't been on for a while. So, and thank you, Johnny. We've got some tea. Hi, Paul. All right, guys. So pretty much we're just going to deep dive into more unknowns and more questions that we have in this case. Hit that like button while we get settled. So pretty much what I want to kind of question, I'm trying to figure out which page to pull up. I'm thinking I'm going to pull up a discovery page to show you what I will be reading. With any case, I feel like DNA and the digital forensics, while they can both still be circumstantial evidence, I feel like those are good pieces of evidence to bring forward to a jury of 12 and, use it to your advantage to either convict somebody, or if you're on the defense, you're trying to point out like, well, this doesn't match my forensics with DNA or my digital forensics, and this doesn't match. So I just feel like, that's what we're going to kind of focus in on today. What were the forensics as far as DNA found on Chris? Well, that's the thing too, is it goes both ways. When Chris is getting his pictures taken and he's got his shirt off and they're looking for defensive wounds, for those who are following our coverage for Sarah Boone, I mean, in her interrogation video, they straight up asked if they could have forensics come in and take her nail clippings. They wanted to test and see if his DNA was found under her nails. So we don't even get that at all in Chris's. Okay, so this is a report date, the 5th of October. We see DA Rourke's name right on there, the assistant district attorney as well. So I'm going to be reading this. This kind of pertains to a little bit of what we talked about last week when we talked about how there were 8 latent fingerprints found at Survey 319 on various items. We also pretty much focused in on them taking his bare footprints. So this is kind of goes along with that kind of vibe, only it's not so much the footprints. It will mention it. But this mentions that they swabbed for his the inside of his cheek. And, where does all this go? All that information. Hi, Curious Christine, Sherry, and everyone else who's here. All of this information is very vital in the scheme of things. James, we will answer your question tonight, actually. So let's start here and then we'll work to her nails. So this, I'm going to be reading instead of leaving this on the screen. I'm going to share this because there's no sound to it. So this is where the prosecution, like we pointed out last week when they did his feet, we won't show the feet ones today. We're just going to show you them taking his pictures of his, you can see the camera in her hand, pictures of his hands. That's Detective Baumhover. So we'll just watch this while I read from that report. So thanks again, guys, for being here. And let's get into this. On October 4th, 2018, an appointment was scheduled to execute the Rule 16 court order in the instant case. I reported to the Weld County Detention Facility reception area at 1:50 p.m. Present was WCDA investigator Dan Boyle, Frederick Detective Dave Baumhover, Aaron Noning, and Kaylee Henson from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and Public Defender's Office investigator Sylvia Martinez. So that's who we're looking at in this footage. We were escorted by WCSO Sergeant Hedinger to a pod in Unit 9 of the facility. Upon arrival, the defendant was present in the open area with 2 additional WCSO deputies. Miss Martinez conversed in private with the defendant for approximately 5 minutes and then began collecting. First, I collected a Polaroid photograph. Now, that is the infamous photograph that we've seen go around, and it's straight up on a Polaroid of him. I then put a new pair of latex gloves to collect buccal swabs. So that's the inside of the cheek. Obviously, that would be to compare any DNA that they have on, interested parties and the victims, all that. Items and all that. I opened the sealed package of swabs without touching the swabs, gave them to the defendant, and then instructed Miss Martinez that the defendant would need to insert the swabs in his mouth and scrape the sides of his cheeks. The defendant complied. So like we've seen with Chris up to this point anyways, he has always complied with the search warrant, with items for the dogs to sniff, with the polygraph, handing over his phones, both of them plural, talking to them about the security system and weird alerts that he had gotten on it. Yes, he did lie through the whole process. But as far as things that he did that was asked of him by law enforcement, he complied. There was no time where he said, no, you can't search my car. No, you can't search this house. You can't come in here. Like, it was always yes, 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 yes. So when the defense, and we talked a little bit about this last week, when the defense found out that they came in and made this visit, they were definitely upset. They definitely would have fought as much as they could to kind of prevent these kinds of processes being done without even them present, let alone at all. Okay, so this goes, the process was repeated with a second set of swabs. Upon receipt of the swabs from the defendant, I placed each set in a divided cup container to allow for air drying. The container was placed on the table and not disrupted during the pending processings. I then proceeded to collect photographs of the defendant's hands. Now, those are the ones that I showed you very briefly in the discovery files. Those are the ones they're taking when he's got his hands all on the table. So they've already taken the hands. Now they're doing the prints in the video right now. Of the photographs taken, 5 were out of focus, and there were a total of 16 hand photographs taken. All photographs will be provided as attachments to this report. I then collected a 10-print card and requested the defendant be allowed to wash his hands. Once that was completed, I collected major case hand palm prints. I again requested the defendant to be allowed to wash his hands. The collection of the defendant's footprints was completed by CBI personnel. While the CBI personnel were collecting the footprints, I began cleaning the table area where the prints were collected. After that was completed, I obtained a new pair of latex gloves and indicated to Ms. Martinez that I was going to package the buccal swabs. I placed the first set of the swabs, cotton, and first in a small envelope, broke the sticks, and closed the envelope. The same was done for the second set of swabs. So then this goes on to just basically say that they sealed it all up in their envelopes and their envelope tape. During the entire collection process, there was no conversation had with the defendant other than for instructional purposes. The collection was completed and the defendant was escorted out of the area. Then it goes into kind of talking about the process and handing over of all these envelopes. It's just a very small paragraph. Detective Baumhover was in charge of them after they left here. So these, let me show you the pictures that they're referring to again on the screen. They are just kind of completing the fingerprint process. This is before they do the footprints that we kind of highlighted last week. So I believe at this point, he's going to wash his hands and they're going to come back and do the footprints. So we already looked at that. So if you need information on the footprints, there is a live stream, set for that specific topic. Is this the page? Okay, yeah, so you can kind of see, yeah, some of them are out of focus. Now, they did also take pictures of his hands upon arrest, remember? So they've already got some pictures of his hands that showed no signs of wounds or defensive, wounds, no cuts, nothing to them. This is the Polaroid that they kind of were referring to that they took that day. Again, this is October 5th. He has been in there since, August 15th? So this is his aging process, whatever you want to call it. This is the state he was in for being in solitary confinement for that time period. That's what he was looking like. And then this, of course, is for the prints. Now, just like we talked about last week, 8 latent prints were found on various items at the scene. The footprint was found on the black plastic bag, garbage bag. Now, there is rumors out there that are saying that the prints out there and the footprint out there didn't match Chris. I gotta sneeze 1 second. We looked it up in the discovery, and it basically says that they were good enough to be sent to the FBI federal handprint scan at a future date. And then the report and the information on it drops off because he signs the plea deal and the investigation ends. So there's rumors out there that people are saying with 100% fact that they didn't match Chris, and we just don't know that. Thank you, Deco. I appreciate that. We just don't know that. Now, there's also people who are said, well, it was stated in the original discovery, because you guys know that things had been redacted throughout the years. I don't see the discovery we have is from the prosecution. So I would find it very hard to believe that they're going to state in there the fingerprints and footprints don't match Chris when their whole discovery files is a case against Chris. So I don't know. It's another thing in this case where I see the comments in my comment section. People bring their questions to me. I heard this. Is this true? And just unfortunately, as cases get older, and I've seen this in other cases that are like 20 plus years old, things kind of get confused and facts get mixed in with opinions and rumors. So what we know about the fingerprints and the footprints is they collected the footprints from Chris, Shanann, And it said last week that we had read in the discovery files that they wanted to do other interested parties. No names were given. And then for the fingerprints, the 8 of them that they found, they ran a state test, nothing matched for them, and they plan to run a federal one in the near future. That was mid-October, and the plea deal was signed in November. And as you guys know, the famous quote by CBI agent Tammy, once the plea deal was signed, the investigation ended and they weren't completed with it. They didn't finish all their interviews, etc. So, it's just one of those things. Now, with that being said, how the fingerprints are just kind of dropped off and the footprint, we just don't know whatever came of it. It kind of raises the question of like, yes, it could have been Chris's. It all could lead to Chris. But unfortunately, I'm the type of person that unless I know for sure, I'm just not going to buy it 100%. I need to see that it didn't match or that it did match for me to say, okay, then I have no doubts, or I don't need to wonder who else was out there. But we just don't have that. So that, in addition to the security system records that are sealed, it just leaves a lot of questions for me. Tony says they messed up from the start. Yeah, the clock stopped. I've never heard of another case where you've heard the agents say the clock stopped. They need to stop protecting these kinds in prison. Hi, Jody is cool. Good to see you. Hi, Angie. Valerie's here. Thank you for listening, even at work. Melanie. Hi, Jay. Okay, guys. So the next part, besides now that we've left it out in the air that the fingerprints and the handprints are left, unknown, we have to kind of talk about DNA found on her. And I'm just specifically talking about Shanann at this moment. While I have this up on the screen, I also want to just point out that there is, something to the effect of bruising of the anterior strap muscles of the neck, right to left, more so on the right. Now, this is talking about the injuries to her face or what they could see on the surface. So keep that in mind, because if it was Chris in the bedroom on top of her, straddling her like he claims, there was a nitrile glove found on the floor. So are we supposed to believe that there's no touch DNA on her neck to swab because he wore gloves? Or because in his story, he never once mentions like, well, I put gloves on and then I got on top of her. In fact, glove is never even mentioned at all. So I just have some questions there. Let's see what else I want to show on here. Let me just pull up a different screen while I play this audio from my phone. So I'm going to need to know that you can hear the sound okay. I'll pull this image up. Of course, this is them taking the photos of him the night he was arrested. But the audio is Chris from the prison interview describing a little bit of what went down that night, according to him in 2019, February, because we all know that the story's changed.
So when we were talking, the last time we talked, the last thing we talked about was where the girls were. Mm-hmm. We never really got to talk about that night. What happened?
So nothing really happened that night. It was in the morning. And it was, me and Shanann, she got home like at 2:00. And, I felt her get into bed. And I just felt like I really didn't. But I just made sure I looked at my phone at 2:00 to make sure she looked like she's in there. And I kind of feel her kind of stirring around a little bit. And I just had a feeling that she knew like what was going on. I mean, obviously, I didn't use like a gift card, that I'd gotten, and I'd used my actual credit card. And I kind of just felt like something. She knew what was going on, and she started rubbing her hand on me, and we ended up having sex. But I guess that was more like a test.
Well,
I would have thought.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because when we talked, when I woke up later on in the morning, like, I pretty much, told her, like, I didn't think it was going to work anymore. And she was like, what happened? What was last night? So I figured that must be the test after I've gone through everything in my head.
That makes sense.
And she just told me, like, to get off of her. And she was like, I knew there was somebody else. I knew there was somebody else. And there was somebody else. I couldn't bring it up. I couldn't just say, yes, there is somebody else. But that's just said, never going to see the kid again. Never going to see them again. Get off me. Don't hurt. And then,
Is that what you said?
that was good. Like when I climbed in bed, that was pretty much like on top. Pretty much like straddling her.
Okay.
Because she thought I was gonna hurt her or baby or something. So because she knew that something had happened. She thought I was just trying to just check out or something. So and that's what happened.
I know it's hard, but do you mind if we up to the time you heard about that? So she comes home. She touches and you guys have sex. It seems like she's doing her test, which I understand. Sounds like you do too.
I'm sure, Nikki or something, the Cole Atkinson or Cassie probably told her.
That's what I was thinking, right? So they talked about it during that whole weekend.
More than like that. That's my parents told me there was like going through like text messages. It's like all like pretty much they all kind of just told her he's with somebody else.
Yeah. And she'd spent a lot of time with the gals. That's what they did probably all weekend is talk about it, give her advice. I think that's what we found. Right. Yeah.
All right. So the reason why I wanted to play that bit is because of the sex. Now, when we're talking about DNA and all that, I don't really need to go into too much depth. You guys are all aware of, what DNA would be processed for them to look if this was true or not. Just looking at, I wanted to scroll up to this comment that Deco asked. In my opinion, he didn't admit about the gloves for it to appear sudden and not planned. Interesting. It would be nice to know, if they tested her neck for touch DNA. And we just don't know that. But with the plastic or the garbage bag out at Servy, the glove on the floor in the bedroom. I mean, the glove was sent away to get tested and processed too. And we don't know whatever came of that. So we don't know whatever came of the fingerprints at Servy, 8 of them, the footprint at Servy on a bag. We don't know what came of, her neck swab on her, the nitrile glove. Michelle says Shanann's hands were bagged. So they put paper bags over, when I say they, CBI in the coroner will put the paper bags over the victim to preserve evidence. So that's another, I'm glad you brought that up because there's other people who have stated that she had bags on her hands. That was done by the forensic unit as a means to preserve things. So, those, if we don't have the answers to those things that I just listed off, that we just don't know whatever happened to it, like how can we be so sure? Touch DNA actually is separate from DNA. Touch DNA, I believe you only need 5 skin cells or 5 something. I believe it's skin cells, because every time you touch something, you're leaving something behind. And that requires less molecules or whatever you want to call it for it to show up in a test than regular DNA. So it is actually separate if we're going to get technical. Touch DNA is simply the lowest amount of DNA that you could pull from something just from like sweat glands or skin cells and stuff. And then separate DNA that's much, easier to test and all that, or everything else that you guys already know about. Something else I wanted, so the thing too is, like Tony says, I go back and forth. Was he in the room and other people helped him? Was he doing this to Shanann and other people were kind of holding her down and stuff? Like, I'm sorry, but there's so many different scenarios that I could have seen taken place. All of them include Chris knowing about the plan. The more I think about this case, Tony says, the more I tend to think he didn't hurt anyone, but knows what happened to who. And they never press him, right, Jay? They really don't. So I personally am curious your guys' thoughts too. Not sure what you're talking about, blah. If you don't like the term touch DNA, then I don't know what to tell you. It's such a weird thing to complain about. I don't like this term. Okay. Oh, thank you, Christina. I could use that tea right now. Justice A to Z, good to see you. All right, so self-sabotage to be able to maintain plausible deniability. Government and law enforcement do it all the time. And, so it's like, for me to prove something, I always try to disprove it. How are we supposed to disprove whose DNA was found on her? Like, did Chris and her have sex? If you think that they had sex that night, press 1. If you think they did not, press 2. Because he never mentions this until this prison interview. I never really bought that they had sex that night. Yes, Deco. I believe he did say that in the prison interview, that he put them over Shanann's head and feet. And then that's, that footprint found on that, they tested Shanann's foot as well. It could have just been hers, but they just want to rule out, all these other things, but we just don't know. We never know, like, what happened to that footprint. And it would make sense because she came home in flip-flops, but maybe it's somebody else's, we just don't know. 2, 2, 2, 2. I'm seeing so many 2s. Christina says they did have sex. Lake Girl also believes that. So we've got like 2 1s. Yes, Valerie, 2 is did not. Very interesting, guys. It's like, why do we all think that, though? All right, so the other thing, too, like, let me just share my screen. If they did, I mean, where's the DNA? We don't have any to even confirm if they did or didn't. That's just weird. All right, hold on. All right. Obviously, they found her in this outfit, purple t-shirt, blue underwear, black bra. She's got her piercing in her nose. And then the paper bags are around each hand to preserve. This talks about the injury, possible patterned abrasion of the neck and left aspect of the face. Goes on further. You guys are more than welcome to read this yourself. Then it starts going off into separate sections and, findings that they have. So the head, neck, chest, abdomen, genitalia. Now, when it talks about the extremities, The upper extremities are well developed and symmetrical with all digits present. The fingernails are long and in good repair, although remarkably dirty with sand and debris from the gravesite. The fingernails are pulled and retained as evidence by law enforcement. And now that talks about her toes. They were short and in good repair, with the exception of abundance of sand and debris from the gravesite. So we know, this is just to confirm, they absolutely gathered her fingernails. If Chris was on top of her, like he described in the audio we just listened to, and she's saying, get off of me, you know, if that even didn't happen and they had sex that night, I mean, there should be something underneath those nails that link Chris. It shouldn't be something that we are discussing 6 years later, like we are, wondering, well, was Chris's DNA ever under there? And it's like, I hate to even raise the question, but how are we supposed to be so sure that no one else is involved if we don't know what was under Shanann's fingernails they collected? They never scrape or collect anything under Chris's nails. And to make matters worse, his defense team, which Chris has also stated numerous times, it would not fall back, the children's death wouldn't fall back to him. Judge denies defense DNA request in the deaths of Colorado mom and kids. This goes into how his defense team said, we would like to have the children's necks swabbed for DNA. We want to know whose DNA is going to come back on the kids. Interesting that they were strictly focused on the children for this. A Colorado judge has denied a request by a defense attorney. Now, why would the judge even deny this? If it's Chris, then it'll come back to him. Why would that, be an issue for the judge to approve? Now, this was on August 19th, the week of the murder. So at this point, he's been in prison or jail for like 5 days. And they're already like, okay, well, we want those necks swabbed. Judge says no. Like, doesn't even take the time to really think about it. An instant no. So it says that, denied the request by a defense attorney for a man accused of killing his pregnant wife and 2 daughters to require a coroner to collect DNA from the necks of the young girls. Now, they weren't strangled anyways. So that's the other thing that's like, this isn't making no sense. Why is Chris wanting them to have their necks swabbed? He stated in his numerous times, multiple confessions, that they were strangled. Chris, they weren't strangled. They were smothered. It's just so bizarre. The judge said in an order Friday he would not tell the medical examiner's office involved in the case how to do its job. Autopsies were completed. The cause of death has not been made public. So that's the other thing too, is going back to the media. It took them a long time for the media to get information about these autopsies. Like, they sat on the information like so long. Like, even HLN, Ashley Banfield, was like, what's going on? Like, why are they being so secretive? The motion seeking the DNA samples from the girls' necks suggests that they may have been strangled. Now, a lot of people have also said they were in oil. There's no way you could collect DNA regardless. They actually had the defense team had a DNA expert who believed that even with them being in oil, that you could gather touch DNA. So, like I said, the lowest level of testing can be, taken, and that's the touch DNA. So he believed that you could still do it, but they weren't allowed to do that anyways. So since we are on the topic of touch DNA, hey Seth, thank you, Jay, for gifting 5 memberships. Welcome to those members. Sorry, I haven't really been looking at chat, just reading stuff, guys. So that's the thing is, this kind of annoys people. Laurism says, I'm sure he did it. Why else would he say he felt nothing when he heard their little bodies hit the oil? Well, for one, he's a liar. So I'm not going to ever just be like, well, he said it. So yeah, he's also said other things and then changed it. The other issue too is certain statements that he's made, he's changed. So he never said that in his first interview before he was arrested. He says that after he's in prison talking to Cadle, and he also said other things with Cadle that turned out to be false. So he just keeps lying and lying. So unfortunately, I don't believe a dang thing he says. What I do kind of tend to believe more are statements that he says in the very beginning, like before he's ever even arrested. I don't know the temperature of the crude oil, Justice A to Z. I'm sorry. Maybe there's a picture with like one of those gauges on the side that might say it. It's okay, you're late, Dustin. It's better than never. So, all right, since we're on the topic of touch DNA. Now this, for all those who know, was somebody who I researched the case with for years. She still has her channel up with Watts content, especially stuff that we kind of collaborated on. It's CDT, and she raised this question. Let's see, this was 4 years ago. What was the mark on Chris Watts' neck at the time of his arrest? So let's look at the red mark on the left side of Chris Watts' neck at the time of his arrest. A lot of people have pointed this out as well in his porch interview. You can see the mark in these photos taken 8/14/2018. See it? Mark on left side neck. Photo from the Discovery, so they obviously honed in on it as well. Sort of reddish. You can see the mark during his porch interview on August 14th.
Walked in the house and nothing was vanished. Nothing was here. I mean, she wasn't here. The kids weren't here. Nobody was here.
What's your wife's name?
Shanann, SHANANN.
What's your kids?
Bella and Celeste.
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 How old are you?
4, Bella's 4, Celeste is 3.
Do you think it means something? It means nothing. Is it a mosquito bite like Tammy Lee put in his head? I remember that image that we just showed of her looking him up and down, which personally, I think that she thought he was hot. Hi, Roxanne. I know somebody was saying like, no, she's disgusted with it. I don't know. It doesn't really matter anyways. I just seen your guys' comments and chat about it, but I don't know. Always kind of felt like Tammy was eyeing him. Is it a mosquito bite like Tammy put it in his head? So he's getting his pics taken. Hey, Debbie Fox. And she says something, what's on your neck here, and points to her neck, like in a mirror image of what it would be on his neck. And she says, mosquito bite. And he shakes his head, yes. At that point, he'd gone through hours and hours of interrogation and polygraph, and his brain was mesh. You know, he just at that point was just, I think, agreeing with her personally. Like, he didn't even question what mark. You know, he just agrees that it's a mosquito bite. And the problem is that should have been swabbed right there on the spot. You know, we're talking touch DNA that could have came back to have been even in the state's favor. Like, what if it was one of the girls' DNAs on his neck, like from being whatever. So many scenarios could have been why, Shanann's, Bella's, or Cece's DNA was pulled from that mark on his neck. Yeah, it could have been a pinch from someone. So many different things. Could have been like a scratch, even from somebody, pulling a child out of his arms. If you want to go down other theories and other people involved, etc. Yeah, Tammy often finished his sentences and offered reasons. Exactly. Even after he's arrested in prison, like, just let him talk. Like, today I watched this documentary on the Menendez brothers, and they do like this interview with Eric in prison. And, they ask the right questions. Of course, as a journalist, not a CBI agent whose job was tied to a case that they're interviewing for. But, they just asked these questions, and he just talked and talked and talked. And it was really interesting. It's like, oh, okay, like, we're getting a flow of like this conversation. I might believe what he's saying, or I'm not so sure I believe that. With Chris, it was, let's interrupt him. Let's say that this is that, and he'll just agree. It's like, how are we supposed to get to the truth that way? I love to see you cover the case, Amber, if you get the chance. I know you've got a lot going on. Which one? Hold on, I'm scrolling up. The Menendez case? I just hope Chris will give the real truth. Me too, Seth, but I don't know. Yeah, it definitely looks swollen, like it is new. Yes. Jay, that one is I'm still trying to figure out what I think about it. Yeah, they were so ruthless. He reloaded. Eric reloaded his gun. Okay, before we get on that subject, let's keep going with this. So that should have been swabbed, in my opinion, as they were kind of looking at it. Oh, we see it right here.
She's like a mosquito bite or something like that? Oh, okay. Face me. She's like a mosquito bite or something like that? Oh, okay.
In my opinion, Chris is not going to correct Tammy. So the mark was documented as a mosquito bite when it could have been something else. Exactly. It could have been something else, and it could have had DNA on it that was vital. And now it's another thing in this case. Was Chris's DNA found on the victims? And were the victims' DNA found on him? Like, what is really tying him directly? And I'm not saying he's innocent. I'm just saying, how can we be so sure that these little things along the way that never got completed aren't anything that we should be like worried about or focusing on or questioning? Like, I don't know. I'm the type of person that I question things. Right. Just leave it at, what's that mark on your neck? So here it's showing the discovery files and how that, like she said, it was documented as a mosquito bite. There was a red mark on the left side of his neck that he identified as being a mosquito bite. There's also a red mark on the front of his neck. So isn't it interesting? And let me tell you guys, this isn't the first CBI note by Tammy or a CBI note in general where it's kind of worded not how it went down. Now, he didn't identify it as being a mosquito bite. You identified it as being a mosquito bite, and he complied. Like with everything else in this case, Chris complies. So, again, you guys might think I'm nitpicking her notes, because in the notes, actually, there is something that says like, oh, things aren't exact. Refer to our audio or video files for the exact quote and stuff like that. I mean, that's just a means for them to cover their butt. But he, never said it. In the video, Chris does not identify the mark as a mosquito bite. He agrees with Tammy and identifies it as a mosquito bite. And it all just comes back to, right, he just went with it. Maybe the mark was nothing. Maybe it was something. And yet we shouldn't be wondering. Since Tammy gave Chris a mosquito bite idea, we will never know what his explanation of the mark would have been. Right. Like, what would he have said? Chris is very moldable through overt and covert suggestions. She knew this. Oh, absolutely. And that was all done at the end of the day. Once she had already told him, you failed your poly, this and that. It's just one of those things. We shouldn't have to wonder whose DNA was on the nitrile glove or on her neck or on the children's necks. We shouldn't have to wonder what that mark on his neck was, whose DNA might have been pulled from that. Like, it's just all these things in addition to not having his full phone records and the Vivint records, I don't understand why people are so angry that we keep digging and not accepting the narrative how can I be so sure? All right, so let's see. We've gone through that. Pretty much all I have left is to kind of just play more of Chris's recounts of that night. And it obviously involves very closeness between them. We listened to the part where he said they had sex. We don't have anything in the autopsy that indicates, sperm or anything like that was found. Yeah. We just don't know. So this is part of the documentary I put together. It'll be linked in the comment section. It's in the description box and pinned in chat. This part specifically was just him talking about the night of the crime and how things went down. Like I said, it's just kind of furthering this like closeness between them. Like, there should be something of Chris found underneath her nails, in my opinion. We know that they clipped them and they sent them to law enforcement. So again, it's just more testing and stuff that were never completed.
As soon as she walked, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Just something in my head was just like something was hurting. Just like I had to say something. So when I woke her up and it's like, hey, we just gotta talk. And I told her, I don't feel compatible. I don't feel like this is gonna work. I just, I don't wanna, can we cancel the trip to Aspen? And she had booked a trip that week. And I was just like, can we cancel that? Can we do something? From what I remember, I even said, can we move to Brighton? Just to get away from this house. Oh. But I'm not sure if that was in the beginning or the end of part of the conversation or whatnot. It was pretty much just I had gotten dressed for work and then we started talking. It was just anger. It was just there was no love there. It was kind of what we were saying, what she was saying. It was just it's almost like we knew something was coming at each other. We didn't know it wasn't ourselves. I think it was more anger from me and more desperation from her because she wanted to fix it. Yeah. She knew something was right. That conversation was so many different ways. They had gone from staying together to not staying together to just all the above. It's she's got mascara. She didn't wash her face when she got home. She had makeup on, so mascara running all over her and stuff like that.
I do find his account about the mascara running all over her. And then you hear him, he says, and stuff like that. Because when a couple weeks ago, when we went through the sheets that were found and the pillowcases that were found in the trash, you'll have to go back to our playlist for that one. we all were wondering, what is this substance? It's described as residue in the discovery files. And then they request her makeup bag, and the family brought it back, and they do all this testing. We don't know. It's another thing that's like gets sent away for testing and confirmation. And then, okay, quickly sign the plea deal. Oh, release all this discovery stuff and body cam and everything in the public. But everything that we're getting from the lab and stuff, like don't include it, or just stop testing, because he signed the plea deal, and we'll just say the clock stopped. Weird.
Yeah, it was nothing about that conference. I just wish I could take all of it back. Just the whole Nikki thing back, everything. But
So then when did it turn?
as far as that conversation, just at the end when I was telling her, like, I told her I didn't love her anymore. That's what happened.
What happened?
She told me to get off her, and then because like when I was straddling her, it was kind of like around her waist type deal.
Why did you get on her like that?
I just when we got on the bed.
Now you'd have to rewind and listen to that. But when we got on the bed, and everyone says, well, he means him and Shanann. But in this whole conversation, that's not the only time that he's kind of including like another person, sounding like, in his verbiage.
That's just what I got on. I felt like she could probably listen to me just laying beside her, but I got on top of her. And every time I think about it, I'm just like, did I know I was going to do that before I got on top of her? I don't know. Just like everything that happened that morning, I don't know. Like I try to go back in my head. I'm just like, I didn't want to do this, but I did it. And everything just kind of like, it just felt like it was. I don't even want to say it felt like I had to. It just felt like there was already something in my mind that I was planning that I was going to do it, and I woke up that morning, it was going to happen, and I had no control of it. Like just like in the sentencing hearing, that prosecutor said it takes 2 to 4 minutes, something like that to happen. Like why couldn't I just let go? I didn't.
Oh, that's interesting.
I just let
Was
go.
it feeling like it was in motion and you just couldn't stop it?
Yeah, it was just like I don't even want to know what she saw when she looked back at me. Honestly,
Did you look at her? What was she doing?
she wasn't fighting.
He said she wasn't fighting. Now, like you said, Tony, or whoever just said it, sounds like, I think maybe he is saying what someone else did and he watched. Like when he says, I don't even want to, that sounded so honest to me and like straight up, like, yes, he's telling the truth. It's so hard because, like I said, he lies so much that every single person in this chat has different things that he says that they'll be like, yep, that was true. Nope, don't believe that. So it's in my opinion, I want to make it clear when he says, I don't even want to know what she thought when she was looking back at me. Now, you could interpret that as he's still on top of her, straddling her, and this is happening. Or you could interpret it like Tony's saying, like people are, I hate to even paint this picture. It's so like sad. People are attacking her, on the bed, put the garbage bag over her head or, just on top of her, with using this nitrile glove that was found on the floor. And he's standing there letting it happen. And he knew it was going to happen. He conspired for it. She's mid-changing. She's in this like pajama shirt, underwire bra, and a thong. Not so much ready for bed, in my opinion. I don't think that was her bedtime outfit, especially since she talks about, the girls come into the bed in the morning and stuff like that. Sometimes, like, I feel like she would have worn pajama shorts or something. Again, a lot of people have their own opinions about that too. But I just think that when he says, she wasn't fighting, they're kind of subduing her with this sedation. And that's my theory, of course. Some people don't believe that. I do think that she was sedated and taken out, and that's why she didn't fight back. Maybe that's why we don't There might not be anybody else's DNA under her nails. She didn't fight back, but we'll never know. Yeah, saw her come in, but it was quick. I know it. I've gone through so many things. Yes, thank you, Heather. A lot of people watch my Watts content, but they don't want to like it, which is fine. Maybe she wasn't fighting to keep him calm since he was, in my opinion, out of control. Perhaps. I just feel like instinctually, especially being a mother and pregnant, you'd be fighting. But a lot of people have said she was sleeping. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things in the case. It just doesn't really make sense to me. Yeah. She was clearly outnumbered, in my honest opinion. Because remember, she says something like, or he says something, she said, F you, and F you. I knew something was going on. I knew you were cheating or something like that. Like maybe she really was saying stuff like that. I don't know, guys. Let me see how much more I want to play of this.
Why do you think she wasn't fighting?
Maybe she was praying. Maybe she was just. I read the Bible. It said, or the scripture says, "Forgive these people, for they do not know what they do." Mm-hmm. Maybe she was saying that. I don't know what she was saying in her head, but she. Like when you guys told me, like, take off your shirt and check for defensive wounds, and there wasn't going to be any. She didn't fight. I don't know why.
So she didn't grab. Could she grab your arms, or were her arms pinned down, or?
Not that I remember. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think like I moved toward my knees or around her. Why can't I just let go?
I don't know, guys. Forgive these people, for they do not know what they do. What people? And who is they? I can't. Definitely would have popped off if she fought, right? There's just no fighting. I know. She wasn't fighting because that never happened. Right. Right. Because in Florida Bass Theory, something happened in the basement. And that's the other thing too. That there was something that happened down there for sure. I think she was ambushed shortly after getting home. Yeah, because like with everything he says, it's BS. There was more than one person there, in my opinion. Blah, we have seen Metallica music and drugs hypnotize possessed, so you might be right. For sure. He can't even effing lie straight when the lie is so obvious, right? No forgiveness here for her. I mean, I'm seeing comments bringing up people who might be involved, and all I can say is I could see it, but we just don't know for sure. She didn't fight back? Why? How? Exactly. I think because she was sedated. Chloroform does not stay in your system long enough. And they found some interesting things in her chest cavity bloodstream. N-butanol, if you guys want to look that up. And pull up the discovery and word search it, guys. Yeah, Shanann was a fighter. I believe that theory. Also, I believe a few could be possible. I don't think it happened upstairs, but in the basement. Right. My opinion, all happens in the basement. It feels that way too. But then why was the bed stripped? Was that just so? And why was there a nitrile glove found on the bedside? I'm not saying that nothing happened in the basement. I'm just saying I get kind of like confused on certain things because I'm like, wait, well, what about? I think so too, Courtney. She said, I think they made chloroform at the Dooms. dumped it in the girl's toilet, and that's why there's no water in the toilet, because when you dump a bucket or something like that, it'll have water in the top tank like theirs did, but it flushes all the water out. The bed was stripped probably because they needed a sheet to wrap her in. But then what's the residue found on the sheets that were in the trash? And they definitely wrapped her in that sheet, that fitted sheet, for sure. Yes. I think it was all set up to go with his story. I think they wrapped her up in the sheet. Right. So that's why they ripped it off. Decoy. Oh. Oh yeah, you can make anything like chloroform and stuff to sedate people, like especially if you're a science major. And there's a few people in this case who, although geologists, they definitely took some science classes. Hey, Cindy. Okay, so the I don't have the discovery pulled up right now. Hang on. It's N-butanol. So starts with a B. Hold on, guys. I gotta sneeze again. All right. Got the discovery. So we have found levels of alcohol, obviously, in this case, that they pretty much say can be explained by decomp. So fine, whatever. We've also found toluene, T-O-L-U-E-N-E, I believe, which is like a paint thinner, but that can also be explained by decomp, we found out. But N-butanol. Hold on. That's something that the ME described as being an unusual finding, and actually has it on a page in Shanann's autopsy as unusual finding. Hold on, I might have. There we go. That should help. Spelling a word correctly for your word search. Do. So on the toxicology report, none of these things show. So people have always said to me, nothing came up in her toxicology. And to which I say, you're right. There is nothing on that page. What you have to do is go to the autopsy page where it starts listing things in her chest cavity. So chest cavity blood. This is just stuff talking about the chest cavity blood. This is the toluene. This was something that we're like, okay, this can be found in glues, paints, and lacquers. But then we also end up finding through research that can appear just from decomp. Now for this, I haven't found anything that can say that this is a substance that can be found during decomp. So the ethanol, alcohol, they attributed to decomp. This, I have no idea why this was in her bloodstream in her chest cavity. N-butanol is a flammable liquid used as a solvent for fats, waxes, resins, shellac, and varnish. It is also used in the manufacture of lacquers, rayon, and certain detergents. Exposure by inhalation may result in irritation to the mucous membrane, coughing, difficulty breathing, headache, dizziness, and drowsiness. It can be absorbed through the skin, leading to symptoms resembling oral ingestion. Oral ingestion may result in sedation, abdominal pain, nausea, headache, dizziness, diarrhea. Large doses may affect the liver and kidneys. The acute toxicology is estimated to be about 3 times that of ethyl alcohol. And that is signed off by the medical examiner. So that, like I said, that's not the only spot that it's described in this discovery file. So feel free to word search it and look at it. Like I said, I believe it's even found on a page in the autopsy listed as unusual findings. So I don't know. What do you guys make of that? Oh, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. Yes, cleaning product. I mean, this stuff, and remember, he goes to Home Depot over the weekend. So just kind of weird. We don't know what was bought there. Yes, they are, Seth. They're corrupt. Stuff was sealed. Yep. So that, Zoe, it's not described as a crystal in the body cam footage where it's found. It's described as a rock. And like other things that we kind of talked about, things kind of get, like when you play telephone and you whisper in one person's ear this, by the time you get down to the 10th kid, the sentence is totally different. People have kind of interpreted it as like, oh, it could be a rock. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, it could be a crystal. But it's described as a rock under her bed in the body cam footage when they find it. Right. Why don't we know what he purchased at Home Depot? Right. So, yeah, the dogs are barking in the basement around the paint cans. Yep. And near the bed down there. So it could have been a crystal, but I'm just saying from what we know in the documentation where it started, people started questioning it, it's described as a rock. Oh, really, Heather? Interesting. All right, guys, that was pretty much, unless you guys have any other questions, that was all I had to kind of lay out for you guys and question tonight. Obviously, I wish we had some sort of clarification in the whole, I mean, even if you word search DNA in the discovery files, like I don't even think anything comes up like from a lab or anything. So, not having direct DNA from the victims on Chris and Chris on the victims, we have this whole mosquito bite theory being thrown out there and fed to him without knowing what those marks could have tested for, possibly with just a little swab of his neck. Like he had not showered. He was wearing the same clothes that he was wearing the day prior when he was arrested. So, we just will never know. Yes, time for some rest. Thank you, and thank you, and thank you to all my mods. Thank you so much, Jay, for donating memberships. And for anyone who just hit the like button and showed up to converse, I really appreciate you as well. So I'm getting closer and closer to baby time, so I will not be, I have to kind of warn you guys that these Watts live streams are going to drop off. I don't know how long I'll be away from YouTube, but don't worry, when I get back, we're going to dig back into things, but not yet. I'm still trying to work through a few weeks. And yeah, so I'm thinking we need to start going through interviews again. So we did his interview with FBI agent Coder. We didn't really start any interviews with NK. Like, what should we do? NK, or should we do Watts polygraph with Tammy? You guys let me know in chat, and those on replay, comment down below your thoughts. You guys have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you soon. Tomorrow night, I'm doing a deep dive into Gypsy Rose's testimony at Nick's trial and pulling up some updates, quote unquote updates from her as well. And then, yeah. So next Thursday, let me know what you guys want to do for Watts topic, and I'll see you guys later, and I'll message you, Roxanne, and see you guys.